And we are ready to go. Just so everybody's aware, we are starting this out with a council meeting. Today is March 1st, 2021. This is to do one quick piece of legislation. And okay, here we go.
What do we have to do?
I lost my email. We're going to do roll call. We'll start out simple.
The agenda says.
All right. Council President Wolf.
Here.
Councilperson Benedetti.
Here.
Councilperson Shrimp.
Here.
Councilperson Bruger.
Here.
Councilperson Curl.
Here.
Councilperson McNamara.
Present.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we are good. And just so you guys know, I do count them every single time, just to make sure I got it. All right, we are going to go straight into legislation. Mark, I don't know if you want to read it, and then I can explain it.
Sure. It is Resolution 2021-05 declaring EMS equipment as surplus property. We have a life pack thingy that we're going to sell for $4,000. And then what I really like about that is it allows for things not listed to be sold or donated at the mayor and the fiscal officer's discretion. I think all the big ticket items are gone already, correct?
You're almost there. There's actually 2 items that are listed that I believe we can sell for over 4,000. There's the compression, Lucas compression as well. So this is pretty much just blanket legislation, like you had said, for me to be able to get a lot of the little stuff gone and some of the bigger ticket items. And this, I set the amount as 4,000 because we're not really sure what the Lucas compression is, the one we're working on right now. The live pack, we do expect that one to go over 5,000, and I have no problem emailing you once we get the deals finalized, just to kind of give you guys a heads up. But this, like we had originally talked about, just kind of doing a blanket legislation, and I'm going to be the fall guy on this. I really should have done this a couple weeks ago. We've known that we were going to be doing this. You guys are more than welcome to shake your head yes. And I honestly don't know why I didn't do it. We should have done it, even if nothing else, last week. So I appreciate you guys doing this. We do have people that are very interested in some of these items, and I just don't want to do it without the legislation in place. So that's why I'm asking for this to be done. That's why I'm asking for an emergency, and it is 100% my fault that we're doing it as an emergency. If you guys choose not to, that's fine. But this is just to get rid of the items and get some money for these items. But I do understand if you don't want to do it, because to be honest, I should have done these 3 readings in January when we knew we were getting rid of them, and I didn't have anybody interested in buying them, so I just didn't do it. Now we really have people interested. So that's my plea to you, to get it done so we can get the items out of here, but totally understand if you guys just want to do the 3 readings and the 30 days. The items will still be here. Somebody will eventually buy them. So, but I would prefer to get it done and out and move on with life. But
Well, I think this meets the standard for doing something as an emergency, is for financial reasons.
right.
You know.
Yeah, we're making money here. We're not, this doesn't seem like it's some underhanded shady thing.
No, and
So what's in a live pack, by the way?
It's a
What's that?
defibrillator.
Oh, defib, and that's
Yeah.
about it.
Your typical life packs nowadays are cardiac monitors, defibrillation setups, and they can also have a few different options you can hook up to different monitoring equipment. I don't think ours is the top of the line most modern, but it's definitely still worth a chunk for a second line EMS or a training institution.
the main things we were told is the battery is at its life expectancy. So whoever buys this is going to have to put some money into it. There's some sort of certification that is also expired on it. So whoever gets this is aware of that and is going to have to be prepared for some little expenses and things like that. But obviously we're not going to put the money into it. So, but yeah, that's pretty much what this is in a nutshell.
So it sounds to me like there's not the kind of exigence that we couldn't afford ourselves at least a second reading, right? There's really three questions in this, right? The first being, you know, does this need the expedience such that we don't need the transparency to our residents, right? Because readings is about transparency. The second is this the kind of deal that, you know, the passage couldn't allow for the 30-day right of referendum, which when it's this kind of transaction, I personally generally feel that's reasonable to waive that because, you know, I just think when you're trying to sell property, you're trying to sell property. And then the third is whether or not we want to allow the legislation at all, right? And so in the question of transparency, this being something that as a village we've always battled, I would be more comfortable with at least 2 readings. And since the first regularly scheduled council meeting of the month is 1 week away, and from what you've already said, I don't feel like this is, you know, there's not someone at the door with $4,000 saying it's Tuesday or never.
Definitely not Tuesday or never, but the reason that we did this is because we do have a local person that is in need of one and wants it really bad.
Sure, but it
That's
could be
that.
next Tuesday just as well as tomorrow,
There
right?
you go. Not gonna say that they will, yes, I can't speak for them, but I know we have somebody very interested in, but I am not in disagreement with anything you're saying. Absolutely not, because again, I should have done this 3 weeks ago.
So I
I'd
mean,
say, I'd
that
say
is
as
my
far as residents go, with the vehicle already sold, what in the world would be an objection to selling this equipment that otherwise just gathers dust?
again, it's not a matter of an objection to selling it. It's a matter of an objection to the sidestep of process.
Well, I understand that, but I kind of hear what Tiffany's saying is maybe the person buying it might lose interest.
And
I
they
think
could also not show up tomorrow either. So I'll play devil's advocate. Just because they told me last week that they wanted it and they really want it and they want to get it done, maybe they've already lost interest. So I'm not fighting for it either way. This is what we're asking for, just so it's done regardless, but it is, I don't have a sales pitch. It is,
I think Brian's, you know, saying, let's have at least 1 reading and then.
Fine.
Well, this is our first reading. I would ask for a second reading, which would be next Monday.
Right,
And then
then we discuss.
I'm saying I would feel comfortable, you know, with a motion to waive the 3rd reading at that point and a motion for passage as an emergency at that point. But I think giving our residents, you know, 2 meeting notices and 2 bites at the apple to know that this is something going on is worthwhile. Because the one argument against, you know, we're as transparent as we can be is when you have things that are brought up in a special meeting, passed with a 1 reading as an emergency in a special meeting, a resident would have every reason to say that this is something that there was no transparency on, which I don't think is anything anyone here would want to look at or defend.
And I would agree that it gives someone an opportunity also who listens to this meeting tonight to say, hey, you know, I didn't know they were selling, I didn't know about that piece of equipment and I would like to bid on it as well. And it gives them an opportunity to do so. And that shows that we're not already pre-designed to have it be purchased by a person, and that we're open to whoever might want to put in an offer for it. So it gives them a chance to think about that. And I think that's good. I think that's good. Also, if someone says, well, if they're going to sell it for 4,000 and I happen to be shopping for one for my organization and I can't get anything below 5, then they also might point that out to us that we're trying to sell it at too low a price and, you know, have an objection. So I'm just saying those are possibilities, whether it's this piece of equipment or a car we were trying to sell or a lawnmower or anything else. It just gives the residents an opportunity to comment on it.
My only comment would be also, would there be any benefit to replacing the battery, having the thing calibrated and certified before we sell it? Would that be a benefit?
Well,
Pretty hard to sell something that isn't working.
right. It works. It's just at its life expectancy on the battery. So a couple things that I will point out, just because I feel like I want to make sure that I don't, you know, I'm just gonna say this, transparency, we've mentioned this in more than one meeting. We've mentioned the life pack in more than one meeting. We've actually been mentioning that we're closing the EMS and selling all of these items since October. So I will say that knowing, and we have actually discussed it in a group about this particular type of blanket legislation. Again, I'm taking the total brunt of not doing the legislation, but as a blanket statement, we've actually had this conversation. So to imply that we haven't been transparent about selling the certain items for $1, the exact dollar amount, we definitely have not. And again, I want to repeat that we are selling the life pack for more than $4,000. This is just a blanket statement that anything, these items are expected to go over $4,000. And the items that are under $4,000 are the ones that, I don't have to bring specific names for. So I am pointing that out. So it's not $4,000. It's over $5,000 that we actually have somebody offering at this point. So, and we have reached out to several different agencies, several different directors of places that are helping us sell some of this stuff. We have talked to Westerville. We've talked to a lot of them. We've brought them in. They've gone through, we have done our due diligence in trying to do it. But again, if somebody's watching this and somebody wants to offer us more money, by all means. And again, I'm not here to sell you. I just want to make sure that I do point out the fact that I do believe we've been pretty transparent with our EMS closing and we're selling the items.
I would say two readings is perfectly reasonable.
All right, well, do we want to just put it to a vote or?
Well, we just,
We're just-
I mean, you can make a motion to waive the readings now and see if it carries.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was gonna say. Do
I'm
people
not,
have in
I'm
mind what
not
they're
even gonna
going
make
to
that.
do? Hmm?
I'm not. Pat the first.
All right.
I'm interested.
I wasn't expecting, and again, it does not hurt my feelings either, but don't worry, I'm not gonna like flip out. So I want you guys to get to your other
It's a good
meetings, so let's just do
compromise.
something. Yeah, let's do roll call, let's do whatever we want to do, or you guys all just say, we're just gonna, so it doesn't matter, but I think Mark, take it from here and decide what you want to do, if you want to waive or try it.
I will just, well, if I make the motion, no, I don't have to. No,
Yeah, you can make a motion to suspend the rules and waive the readings.
I was debating on if that requires me then to vote yay or
No,
not.
It doesn't.
I will move that we waive the last two readings.
Does anybody want to second it? There you go.
All
So
right,
just-
so it was not, so we cannot. And we will read this again at the next meeting then.
There we go. We're on the new business.
All
right.
right, do we want to adjourn then the regular,
First we
the
gotta
special
do
council
new
meeting?
business, old business.
We got to go through
Oh.
the agenda and then we'll
Oh,
adjourn.
that's right, new business, old business, okay.
Anybody have new business that is not going to be directed in the next meeting? Anybody with old business that's not going to be directed in the next meeting? I'm going to give you guys two little tidbits because I don't think it's in the next one. We have had several leaking fire hydrants, more than one. And Eric has coordinated to get those fixed. One of them, I believe, is fixed. We're working on the next one. I believe he's going to be out tomorrow.
Are we just using the same guy that Rick used to contact to fix the fire hydrants?
Eric, is it the same person or is it a different person? I think it's maybe somebody that does MIs. He's on here. I don't know if he's listening to me though. It's either the person that we used before or somebody from MI. I can't remember.
But Eric's
So,
taking
but
care of
yeah, it's the contact we have for that. And that's pretty much it. I'm sure I have other things, but that's that in a nutshell. All right. I'm done.
Move to adjourn.
Second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Same.
Abstentions?
All
All
right.
right, we are good on that.
Yeah, so
All
why don't are we gonna live stream the work session as well, or we normally just record work sessions? I don't.
Really
Your,
gotta just go for it. Let's
All right.
make your choice.
keep
But
it going.
I feel like if you start messing around with it, that usually is when things go pear-shaped. So we'll
Let's just-
Keep it go.
just feel sorry for the
the spirit of
persons that.
transparency, let's just keep it going.
Well, and you can make a disclaimer, the council meeting's over. Now we're going into the basic work section and this could go anywhere. So.
Right. Now, so this work session was,
Remind me here what we're doing.
well, that's funny because this was your baby. We are continuing our discussion on village staffing.
Oh, okay.
Right now, I will start with my own apology that after last work session, I was supposed to type up my notes and get it out to everybody as to the summary of everybody, the current staff's duties as described by the mayor and Eric. I had myself a fairly busy week and was not able to. So that does change the shape of this conversation, because what I was hoping to do was review that. The way I had envisioned this conversation was to take that information and use it to inform what we would like, and then try to marry the two or develop a transition. So I guess what I would propose at this point, if we want to continue that conversation tonight, is just start talking about what we envision, and then we can go back and slot those current duties under current staffs under that in a future conversation. Does that make sense? Or does someone have another way or idea on how to tackle this discussion?
That sounds good. I'd hope everybody's had time to just kind of, think about who's doing what. I think we've got, a rough idea of who's accomplishing the different tasks that need to be done. I think a great example here is, Eric's, now work, is doing the fire hydrant stuff,
They're actually over in the MI section. All of the ones that are leaking are in the MI section, and he's working with MI to get those done.
And do we have any, we haven't asked and haven't talked about it. We can save it for Monday if you like, but I wanted at some point an update as to when the property over there or the green space was going to be.
We don't have a specific date yet, but we are nearing the end. If Eric does chime in here very shortly. They are working on the mound, Tony's mound.
What are we working on? I'm sorry.
Because it wasn't on the actual final
Plan.
plan, like you had said. So they're actually working with the engineer and doing all of that. And as soon as that's done, then we will be moving forward. But
Well, I don't want to complicate that mound, but I know that got used quite a bit for some little kids sledding this year. I would stand out in my front yard in the middle of those snowy days, and you'd see them heading up there. And
Well, this is really getting off track from.
Yeah, we are.
well, Eric's on here, so let him just give you his 2 cents on that. But I believe it's just we're waiting for the engineer's final, like, can we leave it? Can we
yes.
not leave it? Can we, whatever, and get it on the plan and get
Thanks,
it approved?
Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, go for it.
Who can hear me? Is everyone good?
We can
Yeah.
hear you.
yeah, gotcha.
Hello?
Yep, we all can hear you. You just can't hear us apparently.
Can you hear me? Testing,
Copy.
1, 2, 3.
We can hear you.
I'm texting him.
Copy.
If you guys can hear me, I'm sorry, something's going on with my volume. The 1 second. Okay. If you can hear me, great, thank you. The engineers are getting together because the mound was not on the original grading plan. So it requires it to be consistent with the grading plans approved. Otherwise, they have to come back to council for a change to the development text and plan as a whole. So in that regard, if the engineer can show our engineer, i.e. Mike and his team, that it meets the grading plan as approved, it's an administrative item. If they can't do that, either they have to change it, i.e. bring in some dump trucks and take out dirt, or they have to come back to council for your approval. That's where we're at.
There's your
Okay,
answer.
And then in terms of I just wanted to clarify, in terms of the leaking fire hydrants, that's our responsibility now, right? Because that was transferred. So that's not anything to do with transferring the green space, right?
Yes, we're gonna be financially responsible for it, but
So
he has reached out and I
Those
believe it
items
was-
are also our responsibility infrastructure wise, and they need to be handled by us. We have a contractor. There's some oddities because of the timing of this whole event, being that Rick went out, we had the freeze of winter. The contract with Columbus didn't handle this, so there's been some learning experiences. We do have a contractor who is looking at things as of tomorrow, and he's going to give us a better idea of what it costs to maintenance our infrastructure for, I guess, on a yearly basis, so you can approve something for next year's budget.
Are you saying that the
So
maintenance-
I'm sorry, just to follow up one more. So going forward, my whole question came up from Eric was managing fire hydrants now. And so technically though, we're supposed to be managing fire hydrants or contracting it, but we're managing it as a village. So the person that on an ongoing basis is managing the fire hydrants, well, that is the vision that is the village planner who's doing that.
as of right now, he is the person that
Well,
reached
so
out to.
I step in on a lot of different things. It's part of being an administrative, senior administrative item, and this is not unnormal for municipalities. When you have voids, you have to fill them essentially. So that's what I'm doing per the mayor's direction.
Well, I wasn't questioning you, Eric. I was asking Tony a question.
Well, it's been done in the past by Rick. Rick Hotsetter is the one the fire chief is the one that has in the past gone around.
Right, and he's gone now, and so.
Right. My question to Eric is, was the maintenance not done to the fire hydrants in the new development, and that's why they're leaking?
Sounds like it.
That's my question
So-
also.
I can't question,
You don't know?
definitively. I can tell you that we're having a bunch of leaky items, possibly because there wasn't an
Drainage.
end of the year, maintenance that's typically handled on hydrants, meaning that they have to be winterized, right? That could very well be what's occurred. I have got 3 of them so far after the freeze, and there might be others, and we're just picking them off as we find them. That could be the reason.
Well, and this is,
Uh,
like I was trying to bring up, is one of those tasks that we've got to assign to someone, 'cause especially now that it was done before by the fire chief. And, I think it's something that we can do. I know Brian had went around with Rick and did the year-end maintenance of sucking out the water out of the bottom of them. I think that's something that we can keep in-house. It's not
And
that
that's-
technical.
So this wouldn't be any kind of warranty item with new hydrants.
Not if we forgot to drain it,
We,
or
we,
winterize it.
No, it's not. These are older, 2, 3.
all righty. But we were talking about, what direction I don't know, what direction this conversation is going to go with.
Yeah. So how do we want to proceed? I mean, I put forth how I would proceed, but we are a group and we need to have this conversation together.
I mean, if we want to just say if people have a vision about how many employees and what their titles are, and then stop there and wait till we get the notes from Brian, and then take those tasks and slide them under each one of the positions that we think should exist. And then see where we end up, overloaded with one or needing another position we didn't think we did. That's
Yeah,
just
I mean,
a suggestion.
Yeah, that's not far off from what I had suggested as well.
Yeah.
Yes, Mayor Hughes.
So I'm just going to put my 2 cents in there, because as you guys are probably aware, you do have some of the employees and some of the administration that are actually watching these videos as well. I just want to make sure that everybody is fully aware that the current way that I have, the only thing I would like for the meeting minutes and things like that to be done by a clerk of council. But at this point in time, where I have Leah, I am confident and comfortable in everything that is going on. I would like the meeting minutes and things, you know, the clerk of council, I think is a position that you guys need to invest in. You know, whether or not it's just doing meeting minutes or not, that's something for you guys to discuss. And as far as what I have Lisa doing at this point in time, she seems to be thriving at and does not seem to be overwhelmed by any stretch of any imagination. So she has been able to do the website. She has been able to do all of the above, even after needing to have a tooth pulled. So in the last couple days. So the current administration, the way, I think for me, I thought this conversation was going to be more about maintenance and, you know, exactly what we wanted to do with that. And if there was, you know, the maintenance supervisor versus a maintenance full-time, part-time, this, that, that's where I thought this conversation was going. But I want you guys, I mean, I want to make sure that you guys are fully understanding as far as what I currently have, I have no issue with. So I'm not going to be changing around Lisa's position or Kim's position or any of that at this point in time. And I think
Oh,
some of you guys are on that page.
What I had brought up before is, you know, coming up with another position that incorporates the code enforcement officer and really all of the planning and zoning responsibilities, and maybe even, or maybe this would be the better way to describe it, is that they're the clerk of council and the clerk of planning and zoning, which is also the code enforcement officer. That's the position that I envision that we need to create.
And I think that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I just, you know, this conversation kind of went, and I know that part of it was me, and I don't want to take over your guys' thing, but, you know, I'm confident and comfortable with that. But I would agree with you. Planning and zoning minutes are behind. I don't know. It was my understanding that my administrator wasn't the person originally doing the planning and zoning, that somebody on planning and zoning typically did them. And then that person was no longer there, and you could correct me if I'm wrong. But I don't believe, I was under the impression that either Pam or Jen did them.
Well, it is bounced back and forth,
Okay.
and it's never been spelled out. That's what we're doing now. You know,
So, and I
that's
would
why-
agree. I think, you know, having somebody that does meeting minutes and having a person that does all of those kind of things is one of the things that's missing. And then, you know, as far as the actual person that does the permits, you know, if you want to switch over, you know,
you take away those if you take
Yeah.
away all the permitting responsibilities that, like in the past, Becky was doing, you know, and like, you know, creating this position of planning and zoning.
and I'm not in disagreement, because that's something that, you know, I think Becky had been there for so long. She really did understand a lot of our codes. When people would call in and ask zoning questions and people would call in, she was able to give some of those things. And when she wasn't able to give it, she would give it to the code enforcement officer and or Eric, depending on exactly what it was for. With having a newer person, I mean, obviously it's going to take her a little bit of time to get through the planning and zoning and the codes and all of that to be able to, I mean, she can take a payment, she can do all of that, but to actually know what to do with all of that kind of stuff is probably a little more difficult for her, because I'm still trying to figure out some of it. So I'm not in disagreement with that. I think I'm just trying to say that other than that, like, Leah's where she wants to be, and I don't have any issues going on with all of that. And that's with illnesses and all of that. So, I'm not in disagreement with a zoning
Everybody just-
clerk, a zoning.
Try to wrap
Well, so
your
it
head around
sounds, it sounds to me like we have a need/appetite for a planning and zoning clerk and a clerk of council, right? And those two seem to move together, right? Those are the same skill sets. But I don't know that I understand, you know, from my understanding of what a code enforcement officer does,
Those are different.
that to me seems like that is a different skill set.
Yes.
So
it
I
is.
don't think you can club those things together,
Um,
right?
I would think, here's how I'm going to say this. I would think a code enforcement officer could, I'm hearing you. I think they could, I don't think they're gonna wanna sit there and do meeting minutes. No, I think you're totally, they're not gonna sit there and listen to 2 hours of a meeting to do meeting minutes. Now, the actual zoning in itself, when Jason was there, Becky and Jason worked hand in hand a lot with those types of things. You know, she would do all of the process and she would do all of that, but it was working with Jason to, this one's done, you issue the certificate, you know, it just kind of went back and forth. I don't know.
I think this is a position that there isn't a skill set. It's something that you learn. And I do believe it can be done by the same person. You know, code enforcement is a process of sending out letters. I mean, it's very rare that you need somebody to go out there and meet with the resident or business owner, you know, and that's where I think the different skill set comes into play.
I'm sorry, it's not
actually
true.
feel- Yeah, I actually feel
that's
like
what
most,
I was saying.
most of what I would anticipate a code enforcement officer doing is in the field,
Correct.
right? I would anticipate a code enforcement officer to be, you know, driving the village, right? And stopping in and talking to the businesses on the regular, right? That's what I would anticipate a code enforcement officer doing.
And just, I'm glad you said that because that's been one of my pet peeves right now. There is trash out in front of several businesses that, you know, we're working on because again, I do have a hard time sending Eric to do like all of these different things. And we are working on a specific code enforcement officer, right, as we speak. Eric and I have been working on, because again, he's going to be the one to help train this person a little bit because he's the one that's been doing all of it. The being able to go in and talk to the business owners, in my opinion, is way more important than mailing out just a letter. And this goes also with residents. You know, I think as a person that's actually gotten one of those letters before, and I don't know if anybody else here has, it was when I took, you know, we were taking over our house. You get that letter and it's kind of like a smack in the face for the issue that we were going through because we were dealing with a personal issue. And I would have preferred somebody to come knock on the door and say, this is what's going on, and have a conversation with me versus just throwing a letter in the mail and letting me get it. So I think there's different situations when it comes to that, but I think the personal touch on some of those is, in high grass is, yeah, you're going to throw a letter. But when it comes to the businesses, I think being more involved, getting the trash cleaned up, getting, you know, these people really invested in, you know, what we're expecting. I think that's part of it.
Well,
I agree solely with Brian on that one. I
I'm
think
not
we-
understanding why the person that can drive around and look at stuff and interact with the residents isn't the same person that can do minutes. I mean,
No,
That's
I
a very
think
that's two different, very
it's
different. I can
skill set.
speak to that. I've done both. So I can tell you very much so that minutes are not your standard code enforcement officer's rapport, right? That's not in their wheelhouse typically. And the issue is, just the other day, you know, the mayor says she gets a report, hey, there's debris in the sidewalk. That's something you go out, you talk to the individual. He's more than happy to pick it up. He didn't realize it slid out there because of the ice melting, and he got it out of the way, and we prevented people from potentially getting injured. You know, those are things that you have to go talk to them direct, and you have to get to know your business owners. And all of these items are particular skill sets in how you deal with them. They're not just all letters. It's not just all this or that. I mean, there are people who are more geared towards doing certain aspects of the job that you're describing than others. So that's where it comes down to.
Yeah, and that's been one of the battles that we have. You know, Eric and I have been talking about that because that is something that I'm very interested in is having somebody in the field, even if it's not every single day, but being able to reach out to people that, like he's saying, I mean, those little things happen quite often. I think being able to explain something to somebody in person is 10 times easier and much more effective than a letter. And a lot of times, if you're just mailing a letter, those could take a week, or I just got a Christmas card last week. So
Sort of to try to address Tony's,
Maybe, I'm sorry.
that's okay, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, it sounds like, you know, achieving voluntary compliance, it requires maybe a little more diplomacy than strictly an enforcement action that has to go by process.
Well, so here's what I wanted to say, and it's to speak directly to Tony's concern in skill set, right? Different people have different skills, right? And the comparison I would give you is that I certainly can and have laid flooring, right? I've put down carpeting, I've put down tile floors, and I have put down all kinds of flooring. But I can guarantee you that is not my skill set. And I can guarantee you that for someone that is their skill set, would have done a much better job, a much faster job. And you know, the whole experience for everyone involved would have been better if we'd had someone for which it was their skill set. And that's the point that we're trying to get at, is that certainly you can hire anybody who is smart and trainable and probably train them to do both of those jobs, right? But you are not going to get the best work probably out of either of those jobs from that same person, because that's not the skill set that that
Opinion, and I
person.
don't share that. And thank you for,
Okay.
thank you for clearing up what, exactly what the issue is here.
Well,
Well, and
I see clarity, and we can disagree. That's fine.
Well, and I think the only part to that is just reminding everybody that, you know, there are times in which we have 2-hour-long meetings, and paying somebody close to $20 an hour to do meeting minutes, whether or not we're going to invite them to the meeting and have them come do that. If you have somebody that's working 10 to 2 as a part-time person, and then you're expecting them to come to every other Monday night's meeting,
Planning and
that's-
zoning meetings are not that difficult. And if you're at that meeting, you should be able to jot down.
but you're paying them almost $20 an hour. And Diane's
Yeah, I
point,
know.
we're going to pay somebody $25.
You know, that, those meetings are, those meetings are, at least the work session, they're discussion meetings, just like some of our work sessions are. And if you don't have a need to be there specifically, waiting for that little snippet of information, which actually does apply to you, it's painful, and you don't always know what is important for the minutes. For the planning and zoning, it would be, now this is just me, this, okay, but for planning and zoning, to me, the chair, if the chair or someone who's designated in planning and zoning would whoever it is would just be writing now, because it's not a verbatim, it's not supposed to be a verbatim, but just at the end of the meeting, for the purposes of the recording, says, okay, I want to summarize the important points we want to make sure that get in the minutes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blah. And then that way, someone could just listen to the end of the recording and whip up the important points of the meeting, and then it's voted on the next time. And if someone disagrees that something was missed, they can say so at that time, but keep it simple.
I mean, certainly we could look to ensure that we have the standard of minutes that we feel is necessary, and that could simplify minutes all around,
Absolutely.
right? Because they shouldn't be a verbatim, right? It should be, you know, at most a gist of the conversation, and at least a documentation of the actions taken.
Right.
Right,
Okay, so we kind of hit it in there, but, well, so on planning and zoning, then, it sounds like the mayor and our planner, village planner here are trying to put together something for a planning and zoning job and training and all that. You're already doing
No.
that?
No, they said they were in the process of, I think I heard they were in the process of
Code
hiring
enforcement.
a code enforcement clerk or code enforcement officer.
Code enforcement officer.
Yeah, code enforcement officer.
We have been talking to somebody that is extremely qualified to do the job. So we're just, you know, we're trying to get through a couple items and see if it's going to work or not.
I have a quick question about this code enforcement individual, because I know that's been a big, you know, gap we've had for some time now. It's wonderful that we found somebody who seems to be very well suited for the job. I guess I'd just like to use the time while we were talking about it to express my hope that whoever ends up being our next code enforcement officer, or whoever ends up filling that role, you know, that we do pursue a stance of, you know, diplomacy and friendliness, rather than, you know, just exclusively, you know, this, that, and the other letters. I feel that would reflect much better on the village as a whole if that's how our operations were manifested.
Yes, David, to answer that, it's not really a question, but that's my, I don't want to just send people fines or, whatever. I mean, I feel like the personal touch of this is your warning. For example, I was walking around the news section the other day with the ice and the snow and all of that stuff. And I will tell you this, if I would have been able to put notes on every single person's door, nice notes, I would have, because again, when you have that much snow, you're supposed to keep your sidewalk.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
and
just,
there were
I'm
so many
happy to
people that,
hear.
yeah. So, but it's the nice little touch, not just the mail them a letter and hope for the best.
Yeah,
that.
that's good that we're not,
No.
that that's being considered. I mean, there's no reason to act with, the unnecessary,
No.
cruelty or callousness if we can at all avoid it. That's,
No,
no one wants to live in a place like that.
No, and it's the same thing with high grass. I mean, I think everybody deserves a warning or two and all of that, and going and talking to them to find out if there's a medical issue or something along those lines, and being proactive and trying to help them instead of finding them. I'm not
Saves a
looking
ton of
for
work
that.
to do it that way.
Yeah.
Ton of work.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we're not looking to make people mad. We're looking to work with them, not against them. We all want the same result, but we're also
Wonderful.
not going to tolerate, people just doing it every single week either.
Absolutely. I mean, there has to be some kind of,
Yes.
I mean, the code enforcement does exist at, the very, I guess, the most strong recourse being, it's fine or, introduction to, some sort of legal system.
Right.
But that shouldn't be the first step.
Not at all.
Well,
I'm
think
glad that that's-
I kind of agree. In principle, I agree with what David's saying, but I've sat through some council meetings back when I first started about code enforcement and letters, and do you do 1, 2, 3 letters and how much time in between and all that sort of thing. And it was definitely not the consensus, which the consensus was not warm and fuzzy, but just nail them. So not everyone feels that way. And of course, there's a lot of pressure from the mayor's office to fix it now. And, there are various opinions in the village, and they're not all following the warm and fuzzy path. Especially, I think you have the philosophy, especially with the tall grass, where people are just waiting for if you're going to do 3 warnings, and people are waiting for the 3rd warning to actually take action. So then there's the feeling like, why give them 3? Just give them 1, and then. So there's a lot of different
So if I can clear up-
processes out there.
If I can clear up the code enforcement on the grass, the way it's to be handled, no, it's quite frankly, the way it's to be handled is, look, they get a letter. It's not just 3 letters and you're out thing. It's not the way it works. They get notified once per growing season concerning the grass. If they don't comply per the code, it can be mowed at will. They have been given their warning, right? Otherwise, people do wait to the end. That code was altered and changed to match other municipalities' ability to enforce the grass cutting because of those individuals that stretch, the notification process.
Well, thank you for that clarification, but I think that is outside of the scope of the conversation we were trying to have. So let's reel this back in. And I will summarize where I think we were, and that is that we were talking about a planning and zoning / clerk of council, planning and zoning clerk / clerk of council, whose duties would be separate from a code enforcement officer, right? So we would maintain a code enforcement, hold on, Tony, I'm not done talking, right? So we would have a code enforcement officer who would have a set of duties, and then a new position, which would be a clerk of council / planning and zoning clerk, which would have a separate set of duties, right? And we could right size both of those positions based on the duties as they are assigned. That's what I had heard thus far. Now Tony, it's your opportunity to say if you heard something different in that conversation.
Well, this is what I am proposing, and I'll say it one more time.
Mhm.
is combining that person that's the planning and zoning, or the code enforcement officer also is the clerk of council and the planning and zoning clerk.
Okay, so we have now heard that proposal more than once from Tony. So let's take it to the audience. Do we feel that that is a feasible solution, or would we rather that be two separate positions? If we could go through and get a straw, or Tiffany, go ahead, you had something to
No.
add?
Maybe I'm the only, one simple question. Because I'm hoping that everybody else has the same question. What exactly would a clerk of council do? And what exactly is your vision of a zoning clerk? So this code enforcement officer comes in 10 to 2. Would they do just meeting minutes for clerk of council, or would they do something else? Like I currently do legislation. As you guys are aware, when I make mistakes, I take full blunt of it. The only legislation I don't do is what Eric does or you guys do. I'm the one that types it up. And Kim and Leah do it. So would this person then do the legislation, and I would tell them, would they do anything like that? When it's passed, I'm trying not to get in detail, but we have a common drive that all of our legislation goes into. So when we create legislation, it goes into the common drive. When we need to make changes, when it's passed, their signatures put in. Would that person be responsible for doing any of the past legislation or anything, or is that still admin? What exactly is your vision for how far will the clerk of courts do, or clerk of council do, just meeting minutes, or would they assist you guys doing any legislation or anything? And then zoning clerk, that's the same question. So what exactly would you envision? Is a zoning clerk going to actually process payments?
Well, Tony has proposed a code enforcement / clerk of council / planning and zoning clerk. Tony, how would you answer that question to incorporate all of that?
Well, that's, the crux of the problem, but I would consider that the clerk of the planning and zoning clerk would be the one in the office to answer the phone calls regarding all the planning and zoning issues with permitting, code enforcement, all those, that person would be the one that understood that. Now, when I start talking about being the clerk of council, now that's something that I wouldn't think that would be the primary responsibility of the person that's doing the planning and zoning stuff. And maybe because the clerk of council is just, there's not a lot for the clerk of council to do other than the minutes. And that's why I think that the planning and zoning should be under one person, all the stuff that happens with planning and zoning. And I see that as a full-time position. And then to maybe try to job share a little bit into the more clerk of council stuff. And maybe the clerk of council stuff isn't all done. Or maybe I should just take the clerk of councils out of the responsibilities for the position I'm talking about, for code enforcement and planning and zoning clerk, because that's what Becky, did a lot of the planning and zoning stuff. And that's why I think if we had one position that does that, maybe that would be a better way to a more palatable way to create another position, is to not completely, to take out the clerk of council part of that. And there'd be a person that does the planning and zoning stuff that would take away from what some of the stuff that Becky was doing.
Well, I think you would really need to do that, because a clerk of council could be considered, who's going to be their boss? Is it going to be an administration, or is it going to be us, the council? Because there's a separation of powers issue,
Right.
and which would create a conflict of interest.
Well, I don't know about conflict of interest, but they're supposed to be, by statutory, it's supposed to be, the person reports to the legislative branch. So it wouldn't be, I don't think it would be the best idea to mix them up. If we're going to have, it just got folded in before. It has and I guess the question would be is what's changed from a year ago? Obviously, we have more on the code enforcement side, but do we have more pure work on the village clerk of council? I don't think we do. I just thought it would be easier if that person was just someone that, like us, who got paid per, it just would be easier if they just did this. Now, but the mayor's correct. Would they also, if we are working on legislation, instead of, like, say, Mark had his legislation and he wanted it prettied up and ready to present, normally that would fall under the clerk of council to do that and prepare it. So back when Kim Pulley was doing it, she was doing some legislation preparation, and other council members were doing, or at least I think the president of council at one point was doing some of it, or at least drafting some. So they were kind of it was kind of a shared thing. So I think now that we've seen that people can work from home and access the shared drive, Tiffany, is that true? People can access the shared drive from home?
So the only people that obviously that can get into it are myself, Leah, Kim, Chief, and Lisa. So because it has everything in there. I can't actually access the financials. That is only something that they can access. So even there's locks on certain things, which obviously I don't need to. But those are, the common drive is got everything in there. So I've
Right.
learned a lot. I've definitely learned a lot. Like all of the contracts, that's where we put them. Everything is in there.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
So is this something that could be accessed by a clerk of council if the legislation was in a particular area on the?
Here's what I would say. I would only, I'm assuming that almost everything on there is a public record. But at that point, I would still want them to be some sort of, they would need to be an employee. I mean, I don't think anybody is going to trust the things that they're able to get into. I don't know. I mean, that's something that I would ask. Honestly, I would probably talk to Jesse, because it's not, I don't know. I mean, I guess anybody could run for mayor and get the job and have access to it, like me.
Right.
But I mean, there's stuff in there that if somebody decided to just go through and delete, I mean, I know KGT could fix it because it's still there, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know what type of, how comfortable you guys would be with it. I mean, again, I know you guys don't even see it, so I don't know. But I also know that the only way you're going to get it is if you get an actual company computer. So we would have to get a new company. You can't just put it on your own personal computer now. We have our own company computer that we VPN into it.
Well, see, because frankly, the legislation is something that, I mean, theoretically, the legislation is also on the website.
Yes, but it doesn't get there until after.
Well, if we're talking about writing new legislation or researching old legislation just to modify it, we would be able to do all that just on the website. We would not need access to share drive, right?
And that's what I do. I mean,
Yeah.
I think my secret's out. I'm not that good. I just go pull legislation and click in a couple things. So, so no, I mean, as far as, what they can log into and what they can't and all that kind of stuff, it would, that I would just need to ask Jesse, whether or not it's a resident, whether or not, because again, I know you guys don't have access to it. So is there a reason that you can or can't? I truly don't know.
Yeah, well, that would be, well, for us, that would be a different topic, but
Right.
Anyway, so for the clerk of council, then they could then help with legislation that the council is working on. They could do research for council. Besides the minutes, I mean, if there was a particular work session like the one that Brian was trying to take notes on by himself, that we wanted that clerk to attend, to take minutes, because we knew we were going to have that kind of discussion, then that person would be available to do that. And it would just be something that the mayor, you wouldn't have to worry about this person at all. They would just be doing this work for council. And that would keep the separation of power, as you call it. That would keep it that way, and then it'd be someone that you didn't have to worry about.
Right.
And-
And if it's my legislation, I can still forward it to them and they can,
Right,
yeah. So they would work on stuff that you guys are working on and I would still do mine and Kim would still do hers. I
right.
think that would be, which is probably how most of them did it before. So,
And then the only overlapping area, or the main overlapping area, would be the agenda for the council meetings. To make sure that there's a communication, if we were working on legislation, that it got on the agenda. If the agenda was still being done by the administrative assistant, then there just would have to be a line of communication to make sure that everything got on the agenda that needed to.
so
And
yeah, I
then-
mean.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's, I mean, clearly, it doesn't matter to me what you guys do with clerk of council. I mean, I think it's a time.
And then I think, yeah, I think it would be nice to have even that little bit of time that the admin spends on minutes and legislation. She could spend more time updating the website, for example, just one thing.
Right.
But and it's, so I think that's, and I don't think that has anything to do with planning and zoning, and I would just not even go there with that. But on the code enforcement, the only thing I wanted to say about that was, if we had and I know some of it is expensive, that's the only problem, but if we had the software that allowed, if we had the software, and I don't know where we are with the software from the previous code enforcement person, but that would allow all of these letters to be, once set up, to be automatically generated. They're just checked and ordered, click. They're out in the field and they take a picture and it's automatically uploaded. It also has the thing where the resident can report a pothole or whatever, and they take a picture and report it. I mean, there's lots of ways to make the back end administrative part more efficient and less hands-on from that point of view.
And we do have most of that. We do have carbon copied, I don't want to call them complaint forms, but if they've got high grass or cars, whatever. If there's something going on, you can literally write it up, take the top copy, deliver it to the front door, front porch, mail, you can't put it in the mailbox, but whatever. That can be done. We have that already. We also do have the software to where the pictures can be uploaded with an iPad or just a basic picture. That kind of stuff that's usually not the time consuming part. I mean, now you are driving through a lot more houses. You're not that is time consuming, and the commercial property. And then again, just reaching out when we get complaints. I mean, Eric is the one that's taking care of those complaints. I don't want to tell you what some of them are just because I don't want to go there right now. But Eric has actually met with, you don't have to answer this, but I would say several residents in the last week. So with issues, so that people were complaining about. So meeting with residents is something that is pretty common.
And I think if we go back a couple of code enforcement officers, that was where the rubber was hitting the road. In other words, there were officers who were good talking to residents, but didn't want to talk to businesses,
right?
Vice versa. So it is a concern, because it is a different skill set talking to a business than it is talking to a.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And especially, we have issues with our commercial property, and I know you guys all know that I believe that. So, and I think just a couple really good conversations could clear a lot of it up. I mean, I'm not aware of any that are difficult, but maybe continually have different issues, and it's just like one right after another. And maybe it's just going to take somebody time to go in there and try to work with them, because sending a letter to some of these people is not going to work.
Yeah, it
Well, we
would
were
be.
trying to talk about what I was proposing as a position. you know, if we could get back to that, then,
Go for it.
you know, and I want to, withdraw my suggestion of having the clerk of council being part of the job description for the code enforcement officer, planning and zoning clerk, and that'd be one separate position. And thinking this through with this conversation here, is like Lisa is the one that probably should be doing the clerk of court stuff, and then having another position and for planning and zoning and code enforcement. That's what I'm proposing and would like people to think about.
Here's where I'm at, because I feel like we've talked about a lot of stuff and have struggled to find focus. But we definitely are circling the drain around the idea of code enforcement, planning and zoning clerk, and clerk of council. So I think what I'm going to propose is that we each take some time and come to Saturday's work session with a list of responsibilities that we would expect for those three positions. With that in mind, right, when we have all of that in front of us, we can talk through those, what we have brought with us quickly, and understand whether any 2 or 3 of those could be put under a single person, and whether or not, or could that be mixed into our current workload in any reasonable way. Right. But I think what we need to do is we need to understand what we all mean by clerk of council, planning and zoning clerk, and code enforcement officer, so that we can hammer out those definitions, and by definitions, I mean the list of duties, and then shuffle it. But I suggest we all bring that to Saturday. And I think that is as far as we are going to be productive for today. So unless somebody disagrees with me or has something else different than those 3 things they wanted to talk about tonight, I'm going to suggest we adjourn. I'll also renew my promise that tomorrow afternoon, I'll have time to type up my notes from the previous meeting, and I'll get those out tomorrow afternoon.
If I could just say one last thing, is that I think that the maintenance is a whole nother different topic. It's like when it comes to the admin, we're working,
It is.
want to address that with the mayor had brought up earlier. And but yeah, I think that's a great focus for us to just wrap our heads around.
Another work session. So we'll keep on chugging away at this. It's an elephant we'll eat bite by bite.
I'll be quick. I do have a maintenance person being advertised, a part-time maintenance person being advertised as we speak. I do already have some applicants, and I have not interviewed any yet. Plan on doing that this week because we are in March, and we're going to start cutting grass here, hopefully sooner rather than later, because I'm ready for summer. And
you can't force summer to come faster by mowing the lawn.
I'm ready for it. So long story short, I do have a part-time person advertised. My goal, and you guys, I would, weather permitting, the seasonal people will hopefully come, I'm going to go maybe May 1st. So those are the positions that I'm interested in hiring at this point. So that's just, I'm just letting you guys know that that's where we are administratively right now.
Very good. Well, then again, I will reiterate, the ask is that everybody have those duties, the duties that they think are appropriate for those 3 positions discussed: code enforcement, planning and zoning clerk, and clerk of council, so that we can use, after we're done going through Monday night's agenda on Saturday morning, we can use whatever time we have left to nail that down. Okay, and with that, I move that we adjourn this meeting. Everybody have a wonderful, oh yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Just real quick, I will not be there this Saturday. I have a conference that I have to be, that goes from 9 to 11. So I'll fight through it.
You can, if you have anything you wanted to add to that discussion, you can get it to me ahead of time and I'll gladly represent you.
And then as an FYI, I'll be leaving by 9:30. We're going to Cincinnati for a college visit.
Fun. All right, then with that, everybody get out of here. Have a good night.
Bye.
Hey,
All right.
everyone.
All right.